On today's episode, I'll be talking about the 1999 film The Matrix.
If you're looking for a man with no plans or programs, and he always leaves a chance to hold hands for romance. Are you looking for the Luke with an old man, a cold hands? It's a creature of the night who heads for his spotlight. I'm here to welcome you to Brandon at Random Reviews. No method when I choose. It's Brandon at Random Reviews. Yeah.
All right, everyone, welcome to Brandon at Random Reviews, covering one unsystematically chosen topic at a time. If you like listening to a guy recap and review movies in weekly episodes, then look no further. To keep up with the newest content, you can find Brandon at Random Reviews on most major video and audio platforms, as well as all popular social media sites. If you enjoy this, please like and subscribe, and maybe drop me a nice rating on your app of choice. It really helps me out a lot. But like I said, today's movie is The Matrix, released on March 31st, 1999. Runtime 136 minutes. This movie is rated R for depictions of belly button burrowing bugs by the Motion Picture Association of America. Budget $63 million. Written and directed by the Wachowskis. They're credited as the Wachowski brothers in this, but they have since transitioned and are just credited as the Wachowskis. I don't know for sure what their pronouns are, but I just wanted to note that. They also wrote and directed, I'm not positive that they wrote and directed all these, but they at least directed them. They did the Speed Racer movie, which I haven't seen, but I actually do want to see because I've heard that it's actually pretty underrated. I'm really curious to see how good it turned out. I mean, it seems like this directing team does a pretty solid job. They also did Cloud Atlas, another one that I have not seen, but would really like to. I think I actually own that. It's got Tom Hanks and I think Halle Berry in it, and it seems like it could be good, but I also am apprehensive because you just never know, and I have heard mixed things about it. And they also wrote and directed a movie called Jupiter Ascending, which is more of like a spacey sci-fi flick, and they really took some chances with that one. And honestly, I think that movie is hot garbage. It is not a good movie. It's got Channing Tatum and I think Mila Kunis in it, and it's just not a great movie. It's just nothing about it was particularly well executed. I could see how they would have thought some of their ideas would have been cool, but they really didn't land for me. For the composer, we have Don Davis, who also did the music for Jurassic Park 3, which is a notoriously bad sequel. Probably, for my money, not quite as bad as the Lost World Jurassic Park, but it's pretty bad. He did Behind Enemy Lines, which I think is Owen Wilson, and it's about a soldier that gets, spoiler, trapped behind enemy lines. And then last but not least, he did the music for a movie called Ballistic X vs. Sever, starring Antonio Banderas and Lucy Liu. And I gotta say, that movie is near the top of every notoriously bad or universally panned movie that has ever come out. It just flopped really hard. Everybody says it was remarkably terrible, and I've never seen it because of that. And as far as I know, you can't even find the movie legally online anymore. Like, it's not available digitally, and it's like nobody wants it. You know what I mean? And that makes me almost curious to want to watch it, because if it was so bad that they removed it like that, it's like, holy shit. For the cast, we have Keanu Reeves, who plays Neo. He was, of course, in John Wick, previously covered on this podcast. And honestly, there are 4 of those movies, and there's one spin-off now, I believe. I've only seen the first 2, and I've been meaning to get around to the 3rd and 4th one, but I also just haven't gotten to it. You know, it's not like I won't watch it. I didn't think the second one was great, but it was decent enough to like check out the other 2. He was also in Point Break, which I actually covered this season on the podcast it's got Patrick Swayze in it as well and Gary Busey. And honestly, pretty fucking solid movie, even though it's kind of a cheesy guy movie that is ridiculous in a lot of ways. And of course, he really came to prominence in a movie called Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, which he starred in with Alex Winter. He plays Ted in the movie. And I have actually seen an interview where the interviewer clearly didn't do their research and they started talking to Keanu Reeves when they were doing a legacy sequel to Bill and Ted. And basically, the interviewer thought that Keanu Reeves played Bill, and Keanu Reeves, who is a notoriously nice guy and is very easygoing, basically just told the guy, like, yeah, man, you just lost all your street cred for me. Like, you have no credibility with me anymore. Then we have Lawrence Fishburne, who plays Morpheus, and he was in the movie Event Horizon, which is an underrated sci-fi. I want to say it would fall into horror also, but it's very science fiction-y, space type movie. He was also in King of New York, or is it King of New York or The King of New York? I can't remember. Anyway, that one's got Christopher Walken. He plays Frank White. And that movie, I remember being pretty fucking badass when I saw it, but it might be cornier than I remember. I'd have to go back and revisit. And he was also in a movie called Deep Cover with Jeff Goldblum, and I still really want to see that because I've heard that's actually really good. I really only know of the movie because of a Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg song that was made for the soundtrack called Deep Cover. And the whole chorus is like Snoop Dogg saying, because it's 187 on an undercover cop. And I'll probably get sued for using that much. Anyway, Carrie Ann Moss plays Trinity, and she was in the movie Memento, and she was also in some other Matrix movies, or I should say the other Matrix movies. I don't know if she was in the fourth one. I've only ever seen the sequel and the third movie. I haven't seen the fourth one that was a legacy sequel. And I also have noted here that she is hot. I should probably mention that. She's a little more androgynous, I guess I'll say. Like, she's not quite a traditional, especially in this movie, but she's still very good looking, and I'll get into that during the movie at one point. Hugo Weaving plays Agent Smith, and he was in The Lord of the Rings. I think he played Elrond was the character's name. I am not a hardcore Lord of the Rings person, even though I like the movies. I'm not like way into it like a lot of people are. And honestly, I was going to cover all three of the movies in that original trilogy. And I actually had originally already had like this kind of feeling in the back of my mind, like I shouldn't do it. And I talked to my brother-in-law, and basically he said the same thing that I had been thinking, which is like, yeah, I wouldn't cover that because those movies have been talked about so much. Everything that needs to be said about them has probably been said, and it's not worth covering them across 3 episodes to get through them, and they'll take a really long time because they're very long movies, and I would have to debate about doing extended cuts, which are super long too. He was in the movie V for Vendetta. He plays V, and honestly, I love V for Vendetta. I know that the movie is nothing like the graphic novel it's based on, but it's a very cool government out to get you type conspiracy movie, and it's just fucking badass. I mean, it's very stylized and cool to look at, and it's just over the top, but it's really cool, and there's a lot of quotable lines, and Hugo Weaving makes that movie. Like, if he didn't do the voice in it, I don't know that it would have succeeded as much for me as a movie as it did. And he also was in Captain America: The First Avenger. He played Red Skull, and I think when they brought him back for one of the Avengers movies, they didn't bring Hugo Weaving back. I don't know if he wasn't available or if he was too much money or what the deal was there, but he was really good as Red Skull. Like, he's a great fucking villain, and I really fucking love Hugo Weaving. And then last but not least, we have Joe Pantoliano, aka Joey Pants. He plays Cypher. He was in Bad Boys. I don't know if he's in all of the Bad Boys movies or if he's just in like the first 1 or 2. It's been so long since I've seen the first 2, and I've never seen the newer movies, but he kind of plays the same guy who has like a very distinctive voice, and he's very chatty and, kind of comes off as a dick a lot of the time. He was also in the movie Memento with Guy Pearce. That's directed by Christopher Nolan. That was kind of the movie that put Christopher Nolan on the map as far as mainstream directing, especially in America. And honestly, Memento is a fascinating movie to watch. I don't think it's necessarily a movie I want to watch all the time or anything, but it is a really cool concept and it's very well made. And then last but not least, he was in the movie Daredevil from 2003 with Ben Affleck and Jennifer Garner. And the thing I remember the most about Joey Pants's character in Daredevil was there was a shot where Daredevil had like done his initials on the ground and like in fire, and I don't remember if he actually left it burning. I don't know how that would have happened, but I wouldn't put it past that movie to suspend my disbelief like that. But the reflection in Joey Pants's sunglasses in the scene where the fire is burning and the reflection, they didn't make it reflected. Like they didn't mirror the image of the Daredevil, basically the logo. And so it was basically like somebody at the time, I saw it on a podcast. They were talking about it. They said it was like a $30,000 mistake someone made, that it should have been backwards and they didn't make it backwards. Anywho, for casting notes, there are actually quite a few of them for this movie, so bear with me. Will Smith was famously offered the role of Neo early on in pre-production because he said, but he turned it down because he said that he didn't understand the concept of the film. He also hilariously turned it down to star in the Wild Wild West movie, which is just insane because that movie is so fucking bad. And honestly, I remember thinking at the time that was like, oh my God, like how dumb is Will Smith that he didn't get this? But honestly, I could see reading this on a script and being like, I don't really know what they're talking about. Like, I would think the way that they conveyed it in this movie made it make sense. And I can't really fault him, even though I'm sure he regrets it now in hindsight. At the time, he didn't really feel like, he understood it well enough to sign on to it. Brad Pitt also turned down the lead part at one point. We don't know at what point that is. I didn't note it here, and I don't remember if it said. Sean Connery turned down the part of Morpheus. He also turned down the role of Gandalf in The Lord of the Rings, and then allegedly, because of turning down these two iconic roles, he opted to take a chance on The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, and it totally flopped and sucked ass as a movie. But I mean, it's Sean Connery. It's not like he wasn't doing pretty well for himself, that like it would have, fucked him over really bad. It's just he probably regretted not doing it. And then he retired immediately after The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen because, that was just where he was ready to be done. Sandra Bullock turned down the role of Trinity and said she later regretted the decision. She had actually starred in Speed with Keanu Reeves previously, and they wouldn't actually reunite after that movie, after she decided not to star in this one, until The Lake House. And I don't even remember what year that was, but The Lake House was a really stupid concept for a movie, not to be a dick. Madonna turned down an undisclosed role in the film, and she later regretted her decision, but I am so fucking glad she's not in it because let me just say, if you've never seen movies with Madonna, she's not like the worst actress necessarily, but she brings like a certain way about her that is very Madonna-ish that she seemingly cannot shake. It's like it kind of keeps her from, it kind of takes you out of her movies because she's so Madonna-ish, it seems like. I can't really define what I'm talking about, and I probably should stop rambling about it. Anywho, for the plot synopsis, a hacker discovers his reality is a sophisticated VR simulation used by machines to enslave humanity and joins a group of rebels to lead a digital revolution to break the system. For the tagline, there are 15 taglines listed for this movie on IMDb. Here are some of my favorites. I didn't list too many of the shitty ones because it was just, there were so many that were just like really bland and generic. But anyway, first one is Free Your Mind. It's okay. The next one is In a World Full of Ones and Zeros, Are You a Zero or The One? Which I really like that one. Be Afraid of the Future. Okay. The Fight for the Future Begins. Kind of the same thing, but all right. Believe the Unbelievable. Super generic to me. I mean, it's just like, oh, it's a fantasy movie. Okay. Reality is a thing of the past. That's pretty solid. The future will not be user friendly. Okay, that's not bad. Welcome to the real world. Those are all okay. I like the few that I mentioned I liked, but most of them are pretty mediocre in my opinion. All right, guys, let's just dive right into the plot of this motherfucking movie. So, let me just say that I remember seeing trailers for this movie on TV in the late 90s and thinking it looked like it would be the coolest movie ever, and I really wasn't far off. Everything's just so stylistically done, starting with those weird green symbols on a black background, much like old computers, or at least that aesthetic. We see a primitive computer screen and we hear the ringing of a phone, and a man and a woman are talking, and we can't see their faces. We just are looking at the screen. And it seems like one is taking over surveillance duties from the other. They explain that someone named Morpheus believes the person they're watching is the one. The man asks the woman if she likes the person they're watching or if she truly believes he is the one. She says it doesn't matter what she believes. She asks if he heard something and if the line is clean, and it cuts to a group of police officers in a dark hallway with flashlights, and they're slowly moving toward a door at the end of a hallway in silence. They break into the door and see a woman sitting in a chair behind a computer facing away from them. This woman is Trinity, played by Carrie Ann Moss. She's wearing a black leather jacket, and they tell her to freeze and put her hands on her head. It cuts outside to a black sedan pulling up to the location, and a group of men in black suits and sunglasses get out, even though it's nighttime. So maybe they're just big Corey Hart fans. The leader of these suited men, Agent Smith, who is played by Hugo Weaving, chastises the lieutenant for not following his instructions. He was supposed to be there for protection only and wasn't supposed to approach anyone there. The lieutenant explains that his guys can handle one little girl and that they're bringing her down now, but Agent Smith says that his men are probably already dead. It cuts back to Trinity, who begins to attack the officers as they attempt to get handcuffs on her. At one point, she seemingly levitates in the air before kicking one of the officers down. There are a lot of cool, stylized fight sequences in this whole movie. This one is particularly iconic. I've seen it parodied multiple times. She even does a quick run around the corner of the room to give the audience a taste of certain people's abilities in this world. The officers start to realize that they might have gotten more than they bargained for in attempting to arrest her, and she manages to subdue all of them and calls Morpheus, who's played by Lawrence Fishburne, to inform him that her line was traced while she was on the phone. He explains that she doesn't have much time and will have to find another exit, but she'll have to deal with some agents on the way. She rushes out of the building to a fire escape and spots Agent Smith on the ground below. Other agents begin pursuing her as she leaps across the rooftops and evades their gunfire. She makes a superhuman leap between two buildings that no ordinary person could make, especially not in the way that she jumps. The police accompanying the agents witness one of the agents perform the exact same incredible jump, leaving the officers in the dust. When Trinity feels cornered by the pursuing agents, she reluctantly leaps through a building window and eventually makes her way down to the street somewhere. A freight truck maneuvers around nearby as Trinity notices a phone ringing in a nearby booth. The truck begins driving toward the booth. Confusingly, Trinity heads for the phone booth and picks up the phone just before the truck crashes into the phone booth and destroys it. It's unclear what just happened. She seemingly just disappeared in this moment. The agents show up to observe the scene and confirm to each other that their informant is real. They establish that the next target for the team is a man named Neo. Agent Smith says they'll need to run a search, and the other agent informs him that the search has already begun for Neo. We get a cool transition through a payphone to a computer screen. Neo, played by Keanu Reeves, is sleeping with his headphones on in front of his computer. His sleep is interrupted by a message on his screen that says, "Wake up, Neo. The Matrix has you. Follow the white rabbit." Neo is obviously confused by this strange message, as he doesn't know who it's coming from or what it's really about. He tries to hit escape on his keyboard, but nothing happens. Then the message says, "Knock, knock, Neo," and someone knocks on his door. Neo answers the door, and it's a man named Choi and a few other people that he's with. Neo explains that Choi is 2 hours late and then takes $2,000 from him and grabs a data disk. He warns Choi that if he's ever caught using the disk, he is not to tell anyone who he got it from. So obviously it's not probably super legal, whatever Neo is doing. Choi points out that Neo seems a little out of sorts and tries to convince him to go to a dance club with him and his friends. As the girl that is with Choi tries to get Neo to go, she turns and reveals a white rabbit tattoo on her shoulder. Neo takes this as an indication that he should probably accompany them, as it seems like a pretty big coincidence. It cuts to a dark dance club where Rob Zombie's Dragula is playing. Trinity approaches Neo and introduces herself. Neo actually recognizes her name as the hacker who supposedly cracked the FBI database years prior, though he mentions he thought she was a guy. She says most guys do, and Neo realizes she was the person messaging him on his computer. She explains that all she can tell him is that he's in danger and that they are watching him. He tries to just ask who they are, but she tells him to just listen. She says she knows why he hardly sleeps, why he lives alone, and why night after night he just sits at his computer like he does. She asserts that Neo is looking for him, meaning Morpheus. She explains she was looking for him once too, and when he found her, he told her she wasn't really looking for him. She was looking for an answer. Of course, much of the dialogue, especially early on in this movie, is very fucking confusing and shrouded in mystery, and you just know that they've got to fucking explain some shit because they can't keep being all cryptic and shit. Neo reveals that they were both looking for the answer to the same question: what is the Matrix? She explains that the answer is out there and it will find him if he wants it to. It cuts to the next morning where Neo is waking up late for work, and it immediately shows him at his job in a high-rise office where his boss is lecturing him about being late, presumably. His boss informs him that he seems to think he is special and that the rules do not apply to him, but Neo is distracted by a man washing windows outside, and he's clearly just zoning out in his sleep-deprived state, or at least you kind of guess that he's sleep-deprived. He tells Neo that if he wants to keep his job, he'll come in on time from this day forth. We see Neo at his desk in his cubicle, and a man arrives with a FedEx envelope, and he has him sign for it, and we find out that Neo's legal name is Thomas Anderson. When the courier walks away, Neo rips open the envelope and dumps the contents into his hand, and it's just a cell phone that in the 90s would have been the sickest fucking design of all time. Flip phones were always cool for some reason because many phones before them were not that compact, like they were basically just giant bricks. But this one, the Nokia 8110, has a cover where you press a button on the side and basically the mouthpiece slides down, like instead of flipping like a flip phone, it's like just the mouthpiece is covering the dial pad. As soon as the phone is in his hand and he registers what it is, it starts ringing and he answers saying, "Hello?" He's greeted by a voice asking if he knows who it is, and he realizes it must be Morpheus, despite obviously not recognizing the sound of the voice. Morpheus explains that he's been looking for Neo. He says he doesn't know if Neo is ready for what he's about to show him, but they have run out of time, unfortunately. He explains that the proverbial they are coming for Neo. He tells Neo he can see them for himself by peeking his head over the cubicle wall. He looks over near the entrance to the office area and sees the agents who pursued Trinity the night that we saw at the beginning of the movie. Almost as soon as he looks, they all turn and look in his direction, and Neo immediately ducks down behind the wall of his cube, and Morpheus begins giving him instructions on how to get out of there without being caught. It's very exciting, this whole sequence, as each step Morpheus tells Neo to take is done just in the nick of time before he's spotted. He remains crouched down as he scurries out of the office area and into a vacant room. Morpheus tells him to climb out onto a window washing scaffolding by scaling the ledge below the windows outside. So he's got to go out of this window in this very tall building and walk around on the ledge, like basically like hugging the wall to get to a scaffolding. Neo is, of course, reluctant to do this, but Morpheus insists there is no time for apprehension. He must act if he wants to survive. As he makes his way along the ledge toward the scaffolding, he drops his cell phone, and the next thing we know, he's being put into the back of a car by the agents, insinuating he pussed out pretty bad on that whole ledge thing. They take him to an interrogation room where Agent Smith enters and opens a file on Neo, explaining that they've been watching him for some time. Smith says it appears he's living two lives. One as a program writer for a respectable software company who follows the rules, and the other as a hacker with an alias of Neo, who lives in the world of computers and has broken several major laws. Agent Smith explains that he needs Neo's help in bringing down Morpheus, whom he knows has already contacted Neo. Neo says that although that sounds like a really neat idea, he thinks it would be better to give Smith the middle finger and take his phone call that he knows he has coming to him. Note, the middle finger gesture originates from ancient Greece, dating back to at least 423 BC, where it was used as a phallic symbol to taunt others. Known in Roman times as the digitus imputicus, or the shameless finger, it represented a phallus to display contempt or ward off evil. So just in case you were wondering why the middle finger is what it is, Agent Smith expresses his disappointment and asks Neo, "What good is a phone call if you're unable to speak?" Neo looks around the room, confused but seemingly unable to talk, and suddenly his mouth begins morphing shut until his lips just disappear and his mouth is just smooth skin with no opening. So he doesn't really have an opening to his mouth at all. He doesn't have a mouth. He jumps out of his chair in a panic. The other agents restrain him on the table as Agent Smith pulls out this small device that transforms into a mechanical insect. It burrows into Neo's belly button while he legitimately and reasonably freaks the fuck out about it. Suddenly, Neo is in bed, awaking in a panic and assuming everything with the agents was just some kind of vivid nightmare. But his phone immediately rings and it's Morpheus, explaining that although the agents got to him first, they clearly don't realize how important Neo is, otherwise he would already be dead. He tells Neo to meet him under a bridge, and in one of the coolest shots of the movie, it's raining and water's pouring off the bridge as a black car pulls up. Trinity opens the door and tells Neo to get in. As the car pulls away, a blonde woman with short hair named Switch turns around and pulls a gun on Neo, explaining it's for everyone's protection. She instructs him to take off his shirt, although he initially tries to get out of the car, but Trinity convinces him to just stay. Like, he's basically just like, fuck you guys, I'm not taking my shirt off, this is weird. So he removes his shirt, and Trinity uses a large device to extract the mechanical insect that Agent Smith implanted that went in through his belly button. Neo can't believe it's actually real as the parasite emerges from his belly button and into a reservoir in the device, like it sucks it up into it, accompanied by some of Neo's blood, of course. Trinity takes him to an old room where he's greeted by Morpheus, who's wearing a black leather trench coat and stylish sunglasses without earpieces. They just kind of rest on his nose, I guess. Morpheus makes it clear that the pleasure is all his as he has Neo sit in a leather armchair, and Morpheus takes the one across from him. He tells Neo he probably feels a bit like Alice, tumbling down the rabbit hole. He says Neo has the look of a man who accepts what he sees because he expects to wake up. He asks Neo if he believes in fate, and Neo says he doesn't because he doesn't like the idea that he's not in control of his own life. And Morpheus is like, I know exactly what you mean. Morpheus explains that Neo is there because he's been feeling something his whole life, though he doesn't quite know what that is. But Neo knows the feeling has something to do with a thing called the Matrix. Morpheus explains that the Matrix is everywhere. It is in everything he's ever known, done, or seen. He says it's the world that has been pulled over your eyes because Neo is a slave and doesn't even realize it. He says Neo was born into bondage, but he can't explain what the Matrix is in words. Neo has to see it for himself, which is kind of wild because you can totally explain what it is in words, and to me, it's actually almost harder to understand what it is just by looking at it without it actually being explained, but I digress. He offers Neo 2 pills, a blue one that allows Neo to return to his bed, blissfully unaware that anything has ever happened, or a red one, which will show Neo how far the rabbit hole goes. This is done through a series of shot close-ups where the pills are reflected in the lenses of Morpheus's sunglasses. There's it's one on each side, like each hand holding out a pill. He takes the red pill, of course, because, spoiler alert, this movie isn't 35 minutes long, and washes it down with a glass of water. As soon as he takes the pill, Morpheus leads him into another room and asks someone named APOC if they're online. We see a bald man named Cypher, played by Joey Pantoliano? I don't know. But if you're super hip like I am, you call him Joey Pants. Cypher was the man Trinity was talking to on the phone at the very beginning of the movie when the police chased after her. Morpheus explains that the red pill was meant to disrupt Neo's input-output signal so they could pinpoint his physical location in the real world. Neo looks at a mirror that appears distorted and he touches it and it has the consistency of like water, like it's liquidy, and the liquid mirror begins to like stick to his fingers. Morpheus asks, as he's just kind of watching this mirror overtake his hand, Morpheus asks him, "Have you ever had a dream, Neo, that you were so sure was real? What if you were unable to wake up from that dream? Would you know the difference between the dream world and the real world?" Honestly, it's questions like that that make this movie work so well because it basically is forced thought provocation. The mirror coating Neo spreads up his hand, and Neo gasps and says this can't be, but Morpheus interrupts and says, "Be what? Be real?" The liquid mirror covers his arm and his entire body eventually, and his vitals begin to spike and then flatline or something. The team manages to locate him in the real world just in time, and Neo wakes up with no body hair in a weird pod, and it's filled with this viscous fluid. There are several cords or hoses connected to his body, and he pulls a giant hose from his mouth and realizes basically it's like a feeding tube, and he realizes a thick cord is plugged into the back of his head, and he looks around and sees thousands of other pods just like his stacked in massive rows and columns. A floating machine, which is actually called a sentinel, but this is a small sentinel, that looks like a robotic spider flies up to him and focuses a camera on him and grabs him by the neck. As this happens, the plug in the back of his head and the ports on his body suddenly pop out, like everything that's connected to him becomes unconnected or disconnected. A drain opens in the bottom of his pod, sucking all the fluid and Neo out with it. And I cannot be the only one who thinks this looks exactly like a toilet flushing. That is 100% the visual here, and there's almost no way they didn't intend that. Neo is flushed down a giant pipe, which empties into a reservoir where he splashes around in a panic as he's trying to figure out what's happening. A giant mechanical claw lowers from the ceiling and picks Neo out of the water like a prize in a claw machine and brings him up to safety where the crew is waiting for him. Morpheus looks at him and says, "Welcome to the real world," and the screen fades to black. Morpheus tells Trinity, "We've done it. We've found him." Neo regains consciousness in an exam room, and Neo is confused and asks a ton of questions. He has metal probes inserted in his skin that look like acupuncture needles, like they're all over him, and he's laying on his back. Morpheus explains they're rebuilding his muscles because they have atrophied, and the reason his eyes hurt is because he's never used them before. To be clear, this real-life Neo has been plugged into a computer program his entire life. His physical body has never been used in a traditional sense. It was only used by the machines for energy and to process information from the Matrix. I love that all the characters look so pasty and real in the real world compared to their Matrix avatars. After the procedures, Neo wakes up in a cot and realizes there's still a permanent port on the back of his head and he still has the ports all over his body. Morpheus explains that while he was living in the year 1999 inside the Matrix, it's actually closer to the year 2199, though they don't really know for sure exactly what year it is. Morpheus introduces his ship, the Nebuchadnezzar, which is apparently something biblical that I've never heard in my life. Nebuchadnezzar. Okay. It's a hovercraft, or so Morpheus says, even though we don't really see what it looks like from the outside that well. And he takes Neo to the main deck where the crew is manning various stations in a command center. Morpheus explains that this is where they broadcast their pirate signal to hack into the Matrix. He properly introduces the crew members that Neo has already met, who are Trinity, Apoc, Switch, and Cypher. But then there are three that he hasn't met before: Tank and his brother Dozer, and a young, smaller guy named Mouse. And frankly, I'd be so pissed if everyone else got cool nicknames and I got saddled with Mouse just because I look a little young and small. Morpheus takes Neo to show him what the Matrix really is, and he puts Neo in a chair with metal stirrups and leans his head back. They plug into the back of his head, and he gets swept into a room where Morpheus is well dressed again. And this is inside the computer program, so he looks like cool like he did before. Morpheus calls this room the Construct. It's a loading program, an all white void where they appear to be the only two things present. The two of them, I mean the two characters. He says they use it to load anything they need: clothing, equipment, weapons, and or training simulations for use in the Matrix. Neo finds it hard to believe they're in a simulation, but Morpheus dismisses this doubt by pointing out how different Neo looks and feels based on the fact that there are no ports on his body and he actually has hair. I get what he means, but that doesn't mean it should just immediately make sense. Like, don't act so much like you can't fucking believe Neo doesn't get it yet. Morpheus explains that what we think of as real is just electrical signals interpreted by the brain, and I love that his approach to helping Neo understand is basically to act like it's totally sensible and that Neo is a moron for not immediately understanding it all. Or maybe I feel like an idiot because it's so unfathomable, even 25 years later, to imagine a computer program working that well without catastrophic bugs. How many fucking video games have come out that they try and simulate a very large open world environment that is not as big as the world, and the smallest little glitches or missed coding fucks up the whole game and they have to like get a patch out for it immediately and all this stuff? It's all the age of digital games where nothing, if it's bad on the disc, in the past, if it was bad on the disc, it was just not going to work. But now, if they screw up a game, they can fix it retroactively. Anywho, Morpheus gives him a glimpse of the real Earth, a shitty Terminator level wasteland, basically. He explains that in the early 21st century, well, I'm having trouble saying words. In the early 21st century, man gave birth to AI, a single consciousness that birthed an entire race of machines. Obviously, this movie is super off base here because that stuff will literally never happen, right? Right? He explains that they don't know who struck first, but the war scorched the sky, ruining the world. If I deep dive into the explanation, it gets really confusing, but basically humans started living in those pods, like the one Neo woke up in after taking the red pill. The machines did this to harvest bioelectric energy produced by human bodies. What isn't clear, unless I missed it, is why they created the simulation, unless it was to keep the brain active to generate more energy. As Neo processes all of this, he legitimately begins to have a fucking bitch fit and refuses to believe it and demands to be let out. In the real world, they have to restrain him as he fucking loses his mind. They unplug him and he falls out of the chair. Morpheus tries to calm him down, but Neo ultimately just pukes on the floor. He wakes up later and confirms with Morpheus that he no longer has the choice to go back to his old life and his pissy bullshit before was all for naught. Morpheus reveals they typically don't free a mind once it has reached Neo's age. As we know, Keanu Reeves doesn't age like a typical human, so I'm not sure how old he's supposed to be here, but I googled it and it's canonically accepted that Neo is 37 during the events of this movie. Morpheus explains he freed Neo because he had to, because he knows Neo is the one. I don't know if you know this, I'm pretty clever for having noticed this, but Neo is actually an anagram for the word one. He tells Neo there was once a man when the Matrix was first created, who could change things within it at will, and he freed the first of these people. Morpheus says the Oracle prophesized this man's return and that he would end the war and free everyone. The gist is that Neo is supposed to be that guy, which seems obvious, but I like to make sure everyone's on the same page. Morpheus leaves, telling Neo to get some rest because training begins tomorrow. The next day, Tank sees Neo and asks if he slept, and Neo gives him a look that says, "No, I fucking did not sleep." And Tank says he will tonight, hinting that he'll be worn out from training. Neo notices Tank doesn't have ports on his body, and it's revealed that Tank and Dozer are natural-born humans from the city of Zion. And they don't really get into what Zion is, but it's supposed to be like a free city where regular humans who have not been forced into the Matrix are living. Tank is excited to see what Neo can do, and I can't imagine the pressure Neo feels with all this fucking insane hype behind him. They plug Neo in for training, and it's cool because they can just program things into his brain so he doesn't have to spend years learning. They program him with jujitsu, kung fu, taekwondo, and more in a matter of hours. Morpheus comes in and Neo famously says, "I know kung fu." Morpheus says, "Show me," and they enter a dojo simulation. Morpheus explains that there are rules in the Matrix, but like any computer program, some rules can be bent, even gravity. They begin fighting and it's intense. Neo can't land a punch on Morpheus, and Mouse summons the rest of the crew to watch all of this go on. The fight is strange to watch because it kind of feels superficial, but like deliberately so. It's like made to feel like they aren't quite physically fighting and are just making contact with each other. It's happening so fast and they're doing things that defy physics. At one point, Neo runs up a support column to an unbelievable height and flips over Morpheus, but he's immediately kicked in the stomach upon landing. Morpheus keeps pushing him, trying to get Neo to unlock his potential inside the Matrix. Suddenly, they swap locations to a city rooftop. Their clothes change, and Morpheus is still trying to get Neo to open his mind. Morpheus jumps to the next building, a distance that would be impossible for a human, and Keanu drops the "whoa." The crew is discussing the fact that no one makes the first jump, and they're curious to see if Neo is the exception, but he tries and fails anyway. When they're brought back to reality, Neo feels his mouth and realizes it's bleeding, and he asks Morpheus, "I thought it wasn't real," and Morpheus explains the mind makes it real. If you die in the Matrix, you die here. The body cannot live without the mind. Trinity brings Neo dinner later. When she leaves, Cypher is standing outside Neo's room and makes a comment about how she's never brought him dinner. He doesn't understand why Morpheus doesn't just take Neo to the Oracle right away, and Trinity says that Morpheus will take him when he's ready. Morpheus takes Neo back into the Matrix and they walk down a crowded sidewalk, and Morpheus explains that they must treat everyone as a potential enemy because they're part of the system. He says most people aren't ready to be unplugged and will fight to protect the system. Neo is distracted by this beautiful woman in a red dress with blonde hair, and Morpheus asks if he's listening or looking at the woman, and he tells Neo to take a second look at her. When Neo turns around, the woman has turned into an agent, pulling a gun on him. Morpheus reveals that it's just a training program and not the actual Matrix, so Neo wasn't truly in danger in that moment. He explains that anyone not unplugged is a potential vessel for an agent, though. He says anyone who has faced an agent has died, but where they failed, Neo will succeed. He says Neo will be faster than they ever could be. He clarifies that he doesn't mean Neo will eventually dodge bullets, but that when he is ready, he won't have to. Back in the real world, they detect an enemy craft nearby and they land the ship and kill the power to avoid detection. They whisper as they watch a machine that looks like kind of a robotic jellyfish, and it's a larger sentinel than the one we saw earlier when Neo was in that pod, and it passes by. It kind of like seems like it's detecting something, but then it ultimately just doesn't do anything with them. They remain silent until it goes away and then breathe a sigh of relief. Late one night, Neo visits Cypher at the command center and they look at the code of the Matrix, the green letters streaming down the screen. Cypher points out the pressure on Neo and suggests he should run if he ever sees an agent instead of fighting. It cuts to Cypher inside the Matrix and he's eating a steak, and Agent Smith is there with him at a table in a restaurant. Cypher remarks on how good the steak is, even though he knows it's not real. It's revealed that he has agreed to betray the team in exchange for being plugged back into the Matrix with his memory erased and an alternate life. Like he's making a backdoor deal with Agent Smith so this can happen, and so he's going to sell out his team in order to make it work. The next morning, they're eating runny oatmeal, like this. It's not really oatmeal, it's like just some kind of substance with a bunch of vitamins and nutrients in it. Mouse brags about designing the woman with the red dress on from the simulation. Morpheus enters and tells Dozer to prepare the ship, and they're going to the Matrix to see the Oracle. We get a cool sequence of them entering the Matrix, and they use a rotary phone to confirm they've arrived. In the car, Neo mentions how weird it is to have memories of things that never actually happened. They reach the Oracle's building, and Neo learns that she has been with the Resistance since the beginning and is the one who foretold the prophecy of the return of humanity's savior. And I know what a lot of people will say, this rhetoric seems eerily similar to a certain historical religious figure, but I say no way, bro. I'm not picking up any of that here. I don't know what you're talking about. Neo asks a lot of questions, but Morpheus explains, I can only show you the door. You're the one that has to walk through it, which is kind of a cop-out in my opinion. Inside, Neo enters a waiting room filled with potentials, children who might be the one who are also there to see the Oracle. The apartment is remarkably simple, and you wouldn't know it was anything special based on just looking at it structurally. The kids are doing amazing things in the living room, like floating toy blocks with their minds. A bald child in a robe holds a spoon and it morphs and bends like it's made of flexible rubber. Like it basically like bends at the neck and the spoon part of it like just falls down. The child says, "Do not try and bend the spoon. That's impossible. Instead, only try to realize the truth. There is no spoon." Neo holds the spoon and it begins to bend, but he's immediately interrupted by a woman who says the Oracle is ready to see him. He enters the kitchen and sees an older woman baking cookies. She's black with short curly hair, and she tells Neo she probably isn't what he expected. And she's also talking to the audience too, even the most like open-minded viewer probably wasn't seeing this lady when they pictured the Oracle. She tells him not to worry about the vase. As he asks what she means, he turns and knocks a vase off the table. He asks how she knew that was going to happen, and she says, "What's really going to bake your noodle later is whether he would have broken it at all if she hadn't said anything." The Oracle says, "You're cuter than I thought. I can see why she likes you." Neo says, "Who?" And the Oracle responds, "Not too bright, though." They discuss Morpheus's belief that Neo is the one. She asks Neo what he thinks about it, and he says he doesn't really know. She says being the one is like being in love. No one can tell you, you just know it. Through and through. Profound, though sometimes you do need to be told you're in love, especially the first time. There are also times where you fall for someone you didn't expect to fall for, and you also need to be told during that time as well. In a roundabout way, she tells him he's not the one. She says he has the gift, but it seems like he's just waiting for something. Neo mentions Morpheus is convinced he's the guy, and the Oracle says Morpheus is so certain that no one can make him believe otherwise. She explains that Neo will eventually have to choose between his own life and Morpheus's life because Morpheus is willing to sacrifice himself for Neo because he believes this about Neo. She apologizes for the bad news and gives him a cookie, saying he'll feel right as rain after he finishes eating it. Right as rain is a phrase meaning to feel perfectly healthy or that everything is in good order. It originated in late 19th century Britain and likely stems from a pun on the word right, meaning straight or correct, and the reliance on frequent rain in the British climate. It's part of a series of similar older right as this or that type of idioms. After Neo's visit outside the Oracle's apartment, Morpheus says that whatever was said was for Neo alone, like he doesn't want him to share what she talked to him about. The team returns to the exit point, and Cypher is shown in the real world making weird facial expressions while plugged in. As they walk through a building, Neo sees a black cat walk by and then immediately sees what looks to be the same black cat walk by again. Neo says, "Deja vu." This alarms Trinity and Morpheus, who explain that deja vu is a glitch in the Matrix and it happens when they change something in the code of the Matrix. They realize they are trapped in the Matrix right now, and someone has cut the phone line that they were going to use to get out of there. Tank tells them to get out. Mouse opens a curtain and finds a brick wall where the window should be. Mouse grabs guns as a SWAT team infiltrates the building and they corner and kill him. The rest rush upstairs. Cypher is still acting like he isn't the traitor, but honestly, even if this was your first time watching a movie with Joey Pants, or even watching any movie at all, frankly, and someone someone asked you who you would pick if you thought someone was going to be a traitor without knowing who, you'd probably say Cypher. It's just that obvious to me. Maybe that's just hindsight is 2020 kind of thing. APOC hands Neo a pistol and hopes the Oracle gave him good news. The agents close in. The team hides inside the walls to try and sneak past the agents and the SWAT team. As the agents close in, the team hides inside the walls and they keep basically they're just kind of struggling to stay where they are inside the wall. Cypher coughs multiple times when falling dust hits him, drawing the SWAT team's attention, so they just open fire on the walls. Suddenly, a SWAT officer transforms into Agent Smith, who smashes his hands through the wall and grabs Neo. Morpheus sacrifices himself, tackling Smith to protect Neo. He tells the others to get Neo to safety, and they slide down a plumbing pipe in the basement, where they're ambushed again. It's clear this coordinated attack is thanks to Cypher's betrayal. They use these smoke bombs to escape the basement, but Morpheus is still fighting Smith upstairs in a bathroom. Smith introduces himself, and Morpheus says, "You all look the same to me," which is pretty fucking racist, honestly. Let's cool it, Morpheus. Let's be a little more accepting, all right? Morpheus puts up a good fight in the bathroom, but Smith is physically superior in every way, and then Morpheus is basically captured and taken away by the SWAT team. Cypher breaks off and calls Tank from a payphone asking to be pulled out of the Matrix, and Tank directs him to a TV repair shop extraction point nearby. The rest of the team calls Tank and he confirms Morpheus is alive, but he's being moved by the agents. Tank tells him to head to the same TV repair shop, and Trinity is confused as to why Tank says that Cypher already talked to him and is already headed there. Cypher is extracted first and then sabotages the team from the command center in the real world. Cypher wakes up and grabs a lightning gun, which looks like a mix between like a Ghostbusters proton gun and the Honey I Shrunk the Kids shrink ray. If only Rick Moranis had made a cameo, that would be an incredible Easter egg here. Cypher shoots Tank and Dozer, leaving the team stuck in the Matrix, unable to be pulled out while they're in danger, stuck in there, and being pursued by the agents still. Trinity calls the ship and Cypher answers, and he gets really fucking creepy, leaning over her unconscious body in the chair where she's plugged in. He says he used to be in love with her. Trinity realizes that he must have killed Tank and Dozer. Cypher explains he's tired of the real world and he's tired of being cold and eating runny goop. He taunts their physical bodies while they're still plugged in, and he straddles Morpheus in a scene that must have been hilariously awkward to film for the actors. He claims Morpheus lied to them and says if he'd known the truth, he'd have told Morpheus where he could shove that red pill. He doesn't taunt them very long before he pulls the plug on APOC and kills him instantly. Then he does the same to Switch. Neo and Trinity just watch the two expendable characters collapse in the room with them. Cypher then walks over to Neo's body, which is plugged in, and he begins monologuing to Trinity some more. He asks her if she really believes Neo is the one. Suddenly, Tank, who is still alive, blasts Cypher with the lightning gun, saving Neo and Trinity. And it's not just like a dying breath moment where he's just like going to do this one last thing and he's really going to die then. He kills Cypher and he actually survives. Like, he's actually alive. He wasn't mortally wounded at all. And then he subsequently pulls Trinity and Neo back out of the Matrix. And meanwhile, Agent Smith is at a high-rise, marveling at the Matrix's rendering. Morpheus is tied to a chair behind him, and they inject him with a serum to break his mind. An agent enters with a problem, but we cut back to Tank first. We don't get to hear what the fucking problem is. Basically, the assumption is that they found out that Cypher wasn't successful. Tank explains the agents are hacking Morpheus's mind to get the access codes to the Zion mainframe, and if they get the codes, they can destroy the last human city. The team considers pulling the plug on Morpheus to protect Zion. Then Neo remembers the Oracle's choice, his life or Morpheus's, and he realizes this is that moment. Neo declares he's going back in, and Trinity argues that he's too important, but Neo admits the Oracle told him that he actually wasn't the one. Tank says it's a suicide mission, but Neo is determined to bring Morpheus back because, in his mind, he wants to prove himself, and it's not really that much of a risk to him if he's not the one. Trinity insists on going with him too, and she points out Morpheus means more to her than he does to Neo, and she's the ranking officer anyway. Basically, eat shit, I'm coming, fuckhead. Trinity looks incredible in this scene. Her eyes are so fucking blue, man. Like, so blue. Carrie Ann Moss is a great actress. She really sells the intensity here. She's in this other movie. I will just say what it was because it's the only other movie I mentioned for her. It's Memento. Basically, like, I don't really care for her, and you're probably not supposed to like her character in that movie, but I let that like overshadow her in this movie because she does such a good job in that movie of being unlikable, and I shouldn't let it affect me, but she's that good, I guess. Morpheus is fading fast in his chair, and Smith sits in front of him. Smith monologues that humans are like a virus. They move to an area, consume all the resources, and then move on. Neo and Trinity enter the construct to gear up, and they ask for guns, lots of guns. Smith orders the agents to leave him alone and with Morpheus, and it seems like that's some kind of breaking of protocol or just an unorthodox request because they give him this weird look before exiting. Smith takes off his earpiece and sunglasses and he confesses that he hates the Matrix and he finds it vile and repulsive. He needs Morpheus's codes so he can destroy Zion and finally be free of the simulation. Morpheus remains strong and just refuses to break. The music intensifies and Neo enters the agent's building through the security checkpoint on the ground floor. He sends his bag through the X-ray on the conveyor and the metal detector beeps as he walks through, and the security guard asks to see if he has any metal objects on him, and Neo reveals that he has a ton of guns inside his giant black trench coat, and the guard says, "Holy shit," and Neo pulls out 2 Uzis and opens fire. I think they're Uzis. I don't fucking know guns. He begins killing all the guards who are in the area, and then as the one remaining guard is calling for backup, Trinity appears and shoots him, and she grabs Neo's bag, and the two of them begin walking together through this lobby. A SWAT team arrives in the lobby and tells them to freeze, and the two of them run for cover as the team opens fire on them and they fire back. There's a lot of very cool slow-mo cinematography in the scene, and we see Trinity run along the walls as the gunshots tear everything apart, like the walls, and I think they're like marble or something like that, or granite maybe. Neo plows through with dual-wielding submachine guns in slow-mo as the expended bullets litter the floor continuously, and he does some acrobatics while taking guys out. Neo and Trinity enter an elevator, and the two agents come back in to where Agent Smith is talking to Morpheus and reveal to him what's going on downstairs. Neo and Trinity get on top of the elevator inside the shaft and shoot out a cable and rocket upwards in a super romantic embrace. They make it to the roof and are fighting more SWAT members up there, as well as some agents, and there's a SWAT guy that gets killed piloting a helicopter, and he suddenly morphs into an agent. And if you've ever seen this movie before, you know that the most iconic moment ever is coming up pretty soon. Eventually, once they've killed everyone else on the rooftop, there's a bit of a showdown between Neo and the agent from the helicopter. Neo is now dual-wielding pistols, but as he fires several times on the agent in rapid succession, it seems as though the agent is able to move in such fast speeds that he can flip his upper body side to side and back and forth to dodge all of these bullets. As Neo's magazines run out, the agent pulls out a gun and fires at Neo. This is the bullet time sequence that's so iconic. The footage slows down as the shots come toward Neo. Like, you can see the bullets flying through the air, and like, I think it's supposed to be like air and sound waves coming off of them. And he leans back slowly and dodges these bullets, and we gather that this is just a slow motion version of what the agent was just doing, but with Neo doing it now. Unfortunately, at least one of the last couple of shots makes contact with Neo's shoulder, and the agent approaches to finish the job while Neo just lies helpless on the ground. Trinity appears and says, "Dodge this," and kills the agent execution style. An execution style shooting is a deliberate close range killing where a victim is shot, often in the head or heart, while defenseless, restrained, or compliant, designed to ensure a quick death. It is characterized by premeditation, high precision, and a single executioner approach, frequently used in assassinations, organized crime, or extrajudicial killings. She helps Neo up and they look over at the helicopter, and she has Tank upload a helicopter pilot training protocol so that she can fly the helicopter. Inside, the agents are in the room with Morpheus, and the fire suppression system is raining water down on them, and they look outside to see the helicopter lower to their level outside the windows. Neo points a Gatling gun at them and opens fire, and I sure hope this isn't the same room as Morpheus, because there's no way he couldn't catch a stray in this barrage of bullets. By the way, a Gatling gun is a pioneering rapid-fire, originally hand-cranked weapon invented by Richard Gatling in 1861, featuring multiple rotating barrels that allow high-volume fire without overheating. Let me say that right. As a precursor to modern machine guns, it was used extensively in the late 19th century, including the American Civil War, firing hundreds of rounds per minute. I can't remember what John Wayne movie it was that I saw that. Like maybe it was True Grit. I can't remember. There's like a very pivotal scene where somebody has a Gatling gun. Sure enough, Morpheus is still sitting in the chair unharmed after all the shots from the Gatling gun, and he summons the strength to break free of his restraints somehow. The agents see Morpheus running for the helicopter and fire through a wall at him, eventually hitting one of his legs just before he can jump. As Neo notices this, he jumps out of the helicopter with his leg tethered to it and catches Morpheus in midair. As the two of them dangle below the helicopter, Trinity begins flying away from the area while the agents just kind of watch her for some reason. They eventually fire a couple of shots into her gas tank, and the helicopter becomes very difficult to control, and it's not exactly clear why the agents didn't just shoot Neo and Morpheus while they were so vulnerable, but hey, it's a movie. Neo struggles to hold on to Morpheus as Trinity flies around, trying to maintain control of the helicopter. He manages to drop Morpheus to safety on a rooftop from about 30 feet up, it seems. Morpheus performs a nice roll to prevent injury, even though he probably would have actually been hurt in real life. As Neo lands on what I assume is a different rooftop, he remains tethered and is dragged toward the edge, and Trinity is about to crash, so she shoots the bracket holding the tether. She grabs the rope and narrowly manages to get out before the chopper crashes into a skyscraper, causing the windows to explode. Back in the command center, Tank assumes this means Neo really is the one. Morpheus appears as Neo pulls Trinity up and asks her if she believes now. Neo tries to explain what the Oracle told him, but Morpheus stops him and says the Oracle told him exactly what he needed to hear. He says there's a difference between knowing the path and walking the path. Tank arranges their exit at a subway station. The agents find the rooftop a tad too late, but Smith says they haven't gotten out of the Matrix yet. It cuts to the subway station extraction point, and Neo lets Morpheus go first, but Trinity stops to tell Neo something important as the phone rings for her. She says everything the Oracle told her has come true except for one thing. We see a homeless man watching in confusion nearby, but I'm sure that's nothing to worry about. Suddenly, a train screams by, and Trinity picks up the phone and looks over to see the homeless man has transformed into Agent Smith. She extracts back into the real world, leaving Neo stuck in the Matrix to face Agent Smith. Trinity attempts to tell him to run through the communicator, but Neo decides to stand his ground and face Smith in the subway corridor. The two of them draw their guns and open fire while running toward each other, eventually meeting midair in another slow-mo sequence. By the time they have their guns pointed at each other's heads, they are both out of bullets. The two of them fight hand-to-hand combat. When Smith knocks Neo against a wall, he says he's going to enjoy watching him die. Since I'm not going to give a step-by-step walkthrough of the choreography here, suffice it to say we get a very intense and very rapid fight. It seems like an evenly matched altercation, but eventually Smith gets Neo down and Neo coughs up blood in real life. Suddenly, Neo stands back up, gets into a fighting stance, and beckons Agent Smith to come get some. This time, Neo is doing better, and there's even a moment where Agent Smith stops Neo's hand, but Neo flips his hand out and strikes Smith's throat. And it's just such a confusing moment because there's no way that little flick of Neo's fingers was doing any significant damage that should make Agent Smith cry out. But whatever, I'm letting it go. Smith throws Neo against the wall again and unleashes a flurry of punches. Like it's very rapidly. I wouldn't call it slow-mo. It's basically just like you're seeing like the stream of punches and it's happening faster. And it's like I think it's a long exposure is what they call it. So he gets him down again and he eventually throws Neo onto a subway, or onto the subway tracks, I should say, as a train approaches, and he jumps down and grabs Neo by the neck to hold him there. And just as Smith says, "Goodbye, Mr. Anderson," Neo corrects him saying, "My name is Neo," and smashes Smith against the ceiling before backflipping off the tracks. Just as Neo is about to ascend the stairs, he turns around to see the train has screeched to a stop and the doors are opening. It cuts to Morpheus, Trinity, and Tank, who realize a group of Sentinels is not only approaching the ship, but they're clearly headed for them. Neo runs onto the street and is pursued by multiple agents who fire their guns as he flees. It's an exciting chase as Neo enters an apartment building and narrowly escapes by jumping into a dumpster. One of the Sentinels latches onto the ship and begins cutting the exterior with a laser. The team knows that time is running out as it's basically making its way through the hull. Tank finds an extraction point for Neo, who tries to get there just as the agents are closing in. Neo enters a hallway and hears a phone ringing, but when he opens the door, where he thinks he hears the phone ringing, he is met with Agent Smith, who shoots him in the torso. Smith continues firing until Neo collapses against the wall, and the other agents confirm Neo is dead, and Smith says, "Goodbye, Mr. Anderson." In the real world, Trinity whispers to Neo's body that the Oracle told her she would fall in love with the One. She says he can't be dead because she loves him, and even though that doesn't make a whole ton of sense, she leans down to kiss him and tells him to get up. And by the way, even like if she'd been surveilling him for years, to say that Trinity is in love with Neo is wild. Like, they have not even really been around each other that much from what we've seen. Suddenly, as she kisses him, he revives inside the Matrix, and the agents notice him getting up and begin shooting at him, but he reaches his hand out and stops the bullets in midair, and he picks one up and examines it, and he drops it to the ground as the others fall as well and hit the floor. We see things from Neo's point of view now, and everything is composed of green falling code. The agents look at him in stunned silence. When Smith attempts to fight him, he is absolutely no match for Neo anymore. Neo effortlessly blocks Smith's attacks before diving into Agent Smith's body, which is, it's weird to describe. Like, it's just, it comes kind of out of nowhere, and it's a very weird visual, but like, he jumps into his body, and then clearly Agent Smith's body is reacting to it, and like his skin starts doing all sorts of weird stuff, and he explodes. In the real world, the Sentinels enter the ship and start to dismantle it, and just then, Neo's awakening causes the Matrix to ripple, and back in the real world, Morpheus triggers an EMP and the Sentinels collapse. We hear Neo's voice echoing the sentiments from the beginning of the movie, and he explains he's going to show people a world without the Matrix, and that really wouldn't mean much to anybody, but okay. The movie ends with him looking at the camera, putting on his sunglasses, and flying into the sky, like literally like Superman. Credits roll to the song "Wake Up" by Rage Against the Machine, which is pretty on the nose as a musical choice, but it's still pretty cool. Okay, so trivia for this movie. The opening action scene took 6 months of training and 4 days to shoot. Carrie-Anne Moss performed the shots featuring Trinity at the beginning of the film and all the wire stunts throughout by herself, without a stunt double. The studio insisted on a great deal of explanatory dialogue, as they described the screenplay as the script that nobody understands. Carrie-Anne Moss twisted her ankle while shooting one of her scenes, but decided not to tell anyone until after filming so they wouldn't recast her. According to costume designer Kim Barrett, Trinity's costume was made with cheap PVC because of the much tighter budget they had. Similarly, Neo's coat wasn't actually a very expensive fabric, it was a wool blend purchased for $3 a yard. Lawrence Fishburne stated that once he read the script, he did not understand why other people found it confusing. However, he had a doubt if the movie would ever be made because it was so smart. In 2012, The Matrix was selected by the U.S. Library of Congress for preservation in the National Film Registry Archives for being culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant. Prior to pre-production, Keanu Reeves suffered a 2-level fusion of his cervical spine, which had begun to cause paralysis in his legs, requiring him to undergo surgery. He was still recovering during pre-production, but insisted on training. Stunt coordinator Yuan Wu Ping let him practice only punches and lighter moves. Reeves trained hard and even requested training on days off. However, the surgery left him unable to kick for 2 out of 4 months of training. As a result, Reeves did not kick much in the film. Shot almost entirely in Sydney, Australia, the location scouts found it very difficult to find run-down, American-looking locations. Many of the Urban Decay locations had to be created from scratch. The filming of the helicopter scene nearly caused the film to be shut down. They flew the helicopter through restricted Sydney airspace. Laws in New South Wales, Australia, were subsequently changed to allow filming to proceed. On the first day of shooting, Hugo Weaving suffered an injury to his leg, which turned out to be a polyp that had to be surgically removed. For a while, there was suggestion that he would have to be recast, but by shifting the schedule around so that all of his stunt work would take place at the end of shooting, Weaving was able to keep the part. By the middle of 2002, the famous bullet time sequence had appeared or been spoofed in over 20 different movies. And I want to say, I don't remember what year Max Payne came out, but that was like a game that really utilized the slow motion and stuff. It was really cool. I love fucking Max Payne, even though the movie they made on it was fucking horseshit. The Wachowskis harbored their vision for 5.5 years, working through 14 drafts of the screenplay. Although most studio executives who read the script loved their ideas, they had extreme difficulty imagining how this would translate onto the screen. The Wachowskis then hired leading illustrators Steve Skroce and Jeffrey Darrow, who created over 600 storyboards for the film. Executives were reportedly sold immediately after seeing the bold vision on display and greenlit the film. Before filming, the principal cast spent 4 months from October 1997 to March of 1998 with martial arts experts learning choreography. They initially thought that it would only take just a few weeks. For IMDb nuggets, this one's a little weird, even for IMDb nuggets. Actor Alex Winter, who is Keanu Reeves' friend and co-star from the Bill and Ted movies, did not attend the first screening of The Matrix, but did attend The Matrix Resurrections red carpet US premiere screening some years later. I'm sorry, is it assumed that former co-stars should attend all premieres of other actors they've worked with? I don't really give a shit about this. Like, Alex Winter wasn't even like acting. Like, I don't know that, I think he might have been getting involved in movies, but like to act like it's a big deal that he didn't go to The Matrix is wild to me. All right, on to info and ratings. Opening weekend, 27.8 million. Worldwide gross, 473.3 million. IMDb rating, 8.7. This is number 16 on IMDb currently. Letterboxd rating, 4.2. Rotten Tomato critics score, 83%. Rotten Tomato audience score, 85%. Personal rating, 5 out of 5 stars. Praise for this movie. Obviously, this film was groundbreaking and thought-provoking upon its release, and its themes are still very well conveyed and relatable today. Watching this movie for the effects alone is more than satisfying enough to enjoy it thoroughly still. Criticism, I remember thinking at the time that a lot of other actors would have been better suited for the lead role of Neo, but I have grown to enjoy and appreciate Keanu Reeves much more now. Alright everyone, thank you for stopping by. I do appreciate it. Have a good rest of your day. Bye now.
I'm here to welcome you to Brandon at Random Reviews. No method when I choose.